Anyone who needs any interpretation, Nicole, did you say Spanish language or? Anyone need interpretation in Spanish? Okay, we'll ask as more people come in. Well, good morning. Welcome to you. This is the first of two Woolsey Fire listening sessions. And I say listening sessions because we have more than a dozen members of the Woolsey Fire Task Force here to listen to you. And I'm going to tell you the agencies that are that comprise the task force. I'm sorry, I just had knee surgery and I decided not to take my pain pills today because they addle your brain and I want to listen. So I think it was a good idea. Oh, but the chief just spilled his coffee, so see, not a problem. So in the immediate aftermath of the fire, I brought a motion to the Board of Supervisors, which passed unanimously, because I wanted the county to conduct a comprehensive review of the fire. You probably know that we're required by law to assess over the course of the next several months how the fire may have started, what the response was to the fire day of and the few days that followed during the course of the wildfire ripping through our mountains. We are not really required to go beyond that, but I really wanted to, because I know we're going to be faced with these kinds of disasters over the course of the next years, and I need more information about the kind of notification that people get or don't, how they responded to the notification, or how they heard that they needed to get out or weren't told to get out. And then, if they did evacuate, how they were told, okay, now you can go back in again. And I know several people showed up and were told, yes, you can come in by one agency, and no, you can't come in by another agency. I want to understand all of that from your own experience so that we can, by the end of this process, come up with a set of recommendations based on your experience that will serve us in the months and the years to come. That's my hope. Each of our cities is really also doing the same thing, as you know. And the county's job is really to try to coordinate this. So we're speaking with, naturally, with our sheriff's department, with our various county departments, with state, federal. But the most important thing to me today and next Sunday is to hear from you. I know that for everybody coming up to the mic to talk, it's reliving again a painful experience. I know many of you have lost everything or close to everything or too much. And I thank you for being here today and for informing us. The important thing for you, because there will be a number of people testifying, we are asking people to limit their verbal testimony to just 2 minutes, and it goes by really fast. So the most important thing is for us to get more information from you. It can be written and handed in. It can be written and mailed in. I think each of you was given a card as you signed in that has the website on it. I think that's actually the best thing for us to be able to use, because you can attach the entire story, you can attach pictures, you can augment it. We know who you are if we'd like to follow up. If you've let us know who you are. And so let me talk about the task force. I wanted everyone on the task force, and I wanted the highest ranked individuals to serve on this task force. And they have showed up today to listen. And that is what it is. It's not a Q&A. But virtually every member of the Woolsey Fire Task Force is with us today. It's about almost 36 high-ranking representatives from state, county, federal, and local government, and respected community leaders. And they're going to spend a lot of time over the next months going through this information and reviewing the recommendations making recommendations. Let me tell you the agencies who are here to listen, and if you'll bear with me, I will probably repeat this every hour or hour and a half as new people come in. LA County Fire Department, the Department of Public Works, the LA County Sheriff's Department, Regional Planning, the Department of Public Health, Animal Care and Control, the Office of Emergency Management in the CEO's office, the Ag Commission, Weights and Measures. From the state, the California Highway Patrol, Caltrans, Cal Office of Emergency Services, Cal Fire, State Parks, the National Park Service, Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, the LA City Mayor's Office, Councilmember Blumenfield's office, the Los Angeles Police Department, the Los Angeles Fire Department, and the mayors of all of our cities, City of Malibu, City of Westlake Village, City of Calabasas, City of Agoura Hills, City of Hidden Hills. 3 people that I chose to represent our unincorporated areas who are also going to be equal part of this task force. We also invited the County of Ventura to participate with us. Very happy that Supervisor Linda Parks is here. I won't say my counterpart because she's very much her own person in Ventura, but a respected colleague, and also Division Chief from the Ventura County Fire Department and a commander from the Ventura County Sheriff's Department. In addition, and probably most importantly, the county has hired a consulting firm, Citygate Associates, that specialize in fire and emergency response, because we wanted an independent evaluation of all of this information so that we can come up with our recommendations, really based on experience in more than one place, people who have been through this and have made these and helped with recommendations. So all of these people, plus many members of my staff, are here to listen to what you have to say, take notes, give each of you a chance to share your experience. We recognize that many of you have questions as well as testimony to share. So although we're focusing on notification, evacuation, and repopulation process today, we ask Public Works and Regional Planning to join us today to answer questions you may have about rebuilding or fire flow. So if you have questions related to that or comments about that, please speak with Public Works and Regional Planning, and they're out near the sign-in table, because then you can get your individual questions answered. If you have chosen to address the task force, I hope you got a number. When you checked in, we're just going to call people up, 10 at a time. As I said, we'll be limiting to 2 minutes. And so please leave any written testimony you have at the sign-in table with my staff or anybody in a blue Team QL t-shirt, or you can submit testimony of any length online at our lacounty.gov-LA Recovers website. And there's a form there to fill out that people have already started filling out. So we've gotten some feedback about it's not too hard to figure out, but attach anything you want, really, because the consultant is going to lead us through organizing all of the information that's given. So as I said, when you signed in, you've been given a number, so hopefully you know approximately when you're able to speak. We're going to call people to the microphone in groups of 10, and I think where are they coming down to maybe sit? Right there. Okay, thank you, Nicole. Finally, we're live streaming today's event on the county's YouTube channel so that people who could not be here will be able to watch. So I'd like to get started. That is the end of my introduction. We need about 3 minutes to move the camera to this side, so we're going to be able to live stream the people coming to the mic. So I think that so you can start to move the camera if you would. And my script says, vamp until ready. Now, in the old days, my grandmother told me that vamping had something to do with flirting, I think. I see a few gray hairs out here who are maybe nodding to me. I am not going to vamp until ready.
Assistant Ms. Zapata and Sid. I brought with me my one and only information regarding 9 years ago. I presented this to Arnold Schwarzenegger and to the time coming White House, Mr. Podesta, and also John McCain, but to no avail. The bottom line is that I'm coming with a solution, and that 9 years or 10 years after the fact, I was unfortunately affected. I lost everything in Coral Canyon Road at Newell. So the lowdown is as follows. If we had in the system or in mechanism with the weather system, like a board that we see here, and specifically, we know where the spots in the forest are, and this is, I'm reiterating what I said years ago. If we can have notwithstanding the law enforcement, the first responders and volunteers, if we have a group of pilots who are the best in the world, we're Americans, we're the best in the world, whether they can scramble from Port Hueneme or anywhere else that is designed, at an early stage, I repeat, at an early stage of a fire, they can bring down what I call it, you know, practically bombs with the containing the chemicals to literally suck the oxygen out of the fire. At an early stage, suck the oxygen out of the fire. And that would be a solution that I think there's many, as I mentioned at the time at the Jewish Center, many geniuses out there that if it's going to take a patent, so be it. Now, I'm not a genius, but I'm a musician, so I know I'm borderline. Therefore, I would say that if we put our efforts together, we can make this happen at some point. Finally, I guess my time is up, but I want to thank everybody for the attention.
Thank you very much, and leave any written material with us that you wish to, of course. And I'll repeat this as we go along. Did speaker number 2 come in? Number 4? How about number 6? All right, number 7?
My name is Don Kovalevsky. I am a consulting geologist in this area. Been here since 1973. My house burned down in the fire. I built the house myself. I designed it myself. I'm here to take 2 minor things. Needless to say, I'm a little emotional.
Of course.
Can we talk to the planning department and please ask them to concurrently work with both the debris removal permit and your temporary housing permit? My wife is in the back of the room. She's in a wheelchair. The longer I'm out of my house, the more difficult it is for us. So that would save at least 2 weeks. That would be a big thing for someone like me. Second item, the reason why I'm even mentioning that is I was in the opt-in program. I turned into the opt-out program just 2 days ago because I found out from the opt-in representatives that they will take the foundation regardless, period. Slab, foundation, boom. I think like with so many other things we have with the county where we allow for waivers, why don't we allow for a waiver where we sign the responsibility for our foundation? We will have to have it tested by an engineer, and if it's not suitable for reuse, we have to pay for removal. But I know my foundation is going to cost over $100,000. I've had bids subsequently finding out it's about $40,000 or less to do the debris removal. So it's nuts for letting them take it out, all right? And because I'm a geologist working in the area and looking at foundations, and I used to be the county geologist here, I used to be the city geologist here, I used to be the city geologist in Calabasas, all which were contracts. I've looked at a lot of burnout foundations in La Costa and in Coral Canyon, and most of them actually survive. I know we have people saying, engineers or something, oh, the slabs are going to be bad, and we got over 2,000 degrees, and da-da-da. They go all this stuff. But in reality, when you actually go and test, you'll find out most of them test out to be okay. So I'm asking, isn't there some way, and I know it's not county, it's probably up in FEMA or something that set up these rules, but some way that we can ask for a waiver to do that? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's why we have the state representatives here as well. And we're well aware of this issue, so thank you for doing that. And I think that you've already inquired, so we know your name and can contact you, right? All right. Thank you so much. Number 8?
Number 8. I was one of they sold me on going to the even
Really?
I couldn't
Okay.
believe it. They were really working hard to get me to sign up there.
I'm
All
so
right.
glad.
My name is Paul Grisati, and I've been in Malibu for a little over 40 years now. I've been through a lot of fires. I'm on the Public Works Commission for more than 15 years now. And unfortunately for me, I spent a lot of time on the District 29 task force starting in about 2011. As a result of that, we ended up with a draft environmental impact report back in 2016 for replacement of the tanks and undersized pipes. Unfortunately for me, you have the person who led the opposition to this plan sitting in the back row over there. So, and we're successful in getting it set aside. This environmental impact report says building those tanks is going to require 16 months. And the report didn't make clear whether that was 16 months if we do them all at once or 16 months apiece. And I think we need to start construction of the water improvements as soon as possible. It shouldn't be sequentially. It should be all at once. Let's get it over with. Let's get it started. I don't want anybody else to end up having their time to be considered a fire rebuild expire because they can't get fire approval. Now, I hear that there may be some progress on giving people fire flow certificates and letting them get started, and I can't applaud that loudly enough. But let's get going on this right away, because people have already been totally trashed by what happened to their houses, and if you tell them a year from now, I'm sorry, you still can't build, they're really going to be screwed. Thank you.
Thank you. So did anybody with the number 2 come in, or 4 or 6? Okay, can I have people with the number 11 through 20 come kind of sit down towards the front, or you can, it's not that big an auditorium, I guess. Speaker number 9 here. Number 10. Number 11. Welcome.
Good morning. My
morning.
name is Leon Fulltime. My house in Corral Canyon was destroyed. It was my life savings, my nest egg, and a source of income for me. I hope that you're able to put together a plan for people who have lost their homes and are now being told they cannot rebuild. If we cannot rebuild, tell us how we can rebuild. There has to be a solution, and there has to be a way that people who purchased property like myself in '76, and everything was fine, I've been paying taxes that entire time, so that they can rebuild. There's a number of us in this situation, and I hope you can develop waivers or tell us how we can rebuild. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Number 12, 13, 14, 15. Did we run out of numbers already?
A lot of people signed up and then realized they wanted to go to the resource table instead.
So people signed up to speak, but really wanted to talk to the resource table, because a lot of conversation, obviously, about rebuilding. I do want to remind folks here, although I know this is at the top of your mind and, you know, most important on your plate, that we also do want to know, in as complete a way as you can, if you would let us know on our online information form, sort of what your experience was the day of the fire, the next day, kind of, so that we can think as well. You don't have to say anything about it today, I understand, but really how you found out whether you were supposed to evacuate or not, whether you did evacuate, whether you knew where to go, that kind of thing, because I think we want to do some planning about that as well. It's always very chaotic for people. And so that will be very helpful to us. Does anybody have a number that hasn't spoken yet? What number? 22. Oh my goodness. Well, let me go through the ones before that, see if anybody else. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Bingo! 22, please.
Good morning. My name is Susan Nisman. I'm a 44-year resident of Topanga Canyon, and we are in the enviable position of being basically the last huge canyon standing. We've done a lot of planning over the years, and that involved evacuation. I'm glad to see James Grasso, who's co-chair of the Topanga Emergency Management Project, which was started many years ago as a model to deal exactly with preparedness, evacuation, response, and recovery. Specifically, having to do with the evacuation, notification, and alert, this fire, unlike anything that we've ever seen, when I worked with the former supervisor Zev Yaroslavsky as his fire deputy and emergency management coordinator, 15,000 acres was a big record-breaking fire. And we never lost anything like we saw in this fire. I want to thank, first of all the first responders and all the staff and all the people who did so much to manage this situation. There were 250,000 people evacuated. However, in Topanga specifically, what we experienced was first the SCE shutdown. We had no communications. The majority of folks, vast majority, unfortunately, don't have landlines, and if you do, like we still do in our house, they run out of power very quickly because they don't have the right copper lines and all of that kind of stuff. Luckily, we had a battery-operated radio in my husband's emergency kit. We turned that on. And also what I did in the 1994 earthquake, old school, was go sit in the car and listen to the radio when my friend Suji, who had no power on anything, came over at 6:30 in the morning to find out what the hell was going on. As far as the evacuation orders, it was unclear, even on the radio. We couldn't tell when they were talking about Topanga, was it zone 1 through 6 or zones just, those were exempt, or was it just, and which way you were supposedly supposed to go. And then later on Saturday, the day that we ended up leaving the canyon, we did hear there were some people going, I think it was the sheriffs, going up and down the road, but they weren't coming into, it's a very different kind of canyon than what you have here along Malibu, 27 miles long, as I used to say, and a half an inch wide. So you can hear a lot more easily. We've got all these little narrow canyons and sub-canyons, so getting a speaker out there on a, traveling up Topanga Canyon Boulevard, you don't hear it. You maybe hear something blasting, but you're not getting specific information on what you're supposed to do and where the fire's coming. And I have to hope freely for all of those that are here and may recall in 1993 that disaster, a Blue Ribbon Committee was set up. TCEP, the Topanga Coalition Emergency Preparedness, an entirely volunteer organization, was set up, and that was primarily to be able to verify communications.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yes.
So I think that's about it.
Thank you, Susan. And I know you have, if you don't mind, any written thoughts
I
that
will.
you have, post it on that, because there's lots of room.
Yes.
On that website.
I've given a lot of my comments to James for the survey that I hope he has
Good.
submitted, and I will also be adding on to that with my own individual comments. I have a lot of stuff about rebuilding too, but I won't talk about it here.
Thank you very much. All right, anybody else holding a number to speak? What numbers, please?
24, 23, 23, go.
All right, 23.
Can I also have other people's time as well, Supervisor?
Only
I
if,
can't do this justice in 2 minutes.
I understand, no
and
one
when I
really
addressed you in
can.
downtown LA,
That's
I
why
couldn't
we
do
want
justice
the
in 1 minute.
written stuff.
Okay.
The only time we allow people to donate time is if they come in and say, I have 2 minutes and I'm donating it to John Smith.
Okay, so if a few people give me their minutes, is that okay?
It is okay if they turn in their number and we know they're not going to speak.
Okay, so
But they have to come to the mic and say it. Sorry, I'm just using the county rules from our, meeting. So number 23?
I'm 23.
Okay.
Okay, so I have number 14. And
Number 14?
I would like to give a minute to Paul Mora, number 23.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm number 27.
27?
I'll give him to Paul Moore.
Okay.
I'm Stuart Smith, 103. I'll give him to Paul Moore.
What was the number? Sorry.
103.
Did you say 103? Wow, we really got up there, didn't we?
Hi, my name is Alexis Aria. I'm number 6, and I give it to Richard Gibbs in number 24.
Okay, number
He's
6
coming up.
to number 24?
24, he's coming up.
All right. It's really confusing. Okay, 103 gave it to number 23, is that correct? Yes. All right. All right, number 23, come up. I see that you have 2 minutes of your time, 2 minutes from 14, 2 minutes from 27, and 2 minutes from 103. Okay?
Thank you, Supervisor.
You bet.
Good afternoon, or is it still good morning? My name is Paul Mora, and I live in Corral Canyon. I've lived in Corral Canyon for 11 years, and I've been through 2 fires, the 2007 Corral Fire and, of course, the Woolsey Fire. I'm encouraged to see so many people here, civil servants. Thank you for your service to our county. There's good and bad with any natural disaster, and so some of us may express ourselves a certain way, and I will apologize if you take anything personally, but at the end of the day, I think we're all here to figure out what went right, what went wrong, and learn from it, right? So
Correct.
I have a lot to say.
But no swearing, okay?
I won't swear, Supervisor.
Okay,
I will say I'm a little discouraged that we don't have enough residents on the task force. There's no one on this task force that represents the best interests of Corral Canyon, but perhaps we can get somebody. Zuma J, you represent the best interests of Malibu and Latigo for sure, but Corral Canyon's a little different, but thank you for being there. I appreciate that. It would be nice to have someone from Corral Canyon on this committee, and I'll tell you why. 11 years ago, I was at the Malibu High School when Chief Freeman was the fire chief, and we had lost 53 homes. And what started off as kind of a PowerPoint presentation telling all the people that lost homes what went right, what went wrong, Chief Freeman realized that a lot of mistakes were made by the fire department. And he was brave enough to acknowledge those mistakes and to put together a task force. And I was proud to sit on that task force. And during an entire year, there were probably 12 of us who worked with Chief Freeman personally, and we made a lot of change, and we changed a lot of policies that were supposed to make us all safer for the next fire. And I was proud to work with Chief Freeman and Susan Nisman and your predecessor, Xavier Osofsky, and together we made a lot of positive change. I'm proud to have formed the Corral Canyon Fire Safety Council. I'm proud to have formed with Chief Osby and Matt Haynes over there. Very proud to have formed the Call Firefighter Program, Engine 271. I'm proud to be a volunteer with the Sheriff's Department, and I sit on Arson Watch. And so when the fire broke out on Friday morning, I expected something far different than what ended up happening. And I understand that this fire was massive and that our fire department was just simply overwhelmed, and I get that. But I also personally witnessed a lot of mistakes that were made, and I think that these things need to be addressed. First of all, we've all talked about the evacuations. I did not evacuate, but my family did. And they were stuck in gridlock for 3 to 5 hours, just like everyone else. And that's a dangerous, dangerous situation. I think we all know that when you try to evacuate an entire city at the same time. Thankfully, no one was killed. And as hundreds and hundreds of deputies came rushing into Malibu, they all neglected the need to do traffic control because our traffic lights were all non-working. So everyone stopped at every traffic light. It was gridlock. It was awful. And I did not witness it, but I've heard it from a lot of people. So all these deputies flew past every single intersection and neglected getting people out. And that's mistake number one. I decided to stay. I signed a waiver with the sheriff's deputy who came to my house and said, you need to leave, and I said, I'm staying. And I stayed because I believed all those years, 6, 7, 8 years of work, I believed that Corral Canyon was going to see many engines coming into its neighborhoods. And that didn't happen. And I understand why. We were simply overwhelmed and we were thin. But I didn't know what was going on. We didn't have power, so I couldn't check social media. I didn't get any alerts from the county, got no alerts from the city because there was no communication. I stayed behind with a couple neighbors. We were planning on fighting the fire, and we watched the fire enter the upper bowl of Corral Canyon at 10:35 in the morning. And it sat there, and it hardly moved for 7 hours. 7 hours, and it was the only active flame in Corral Canyon. And I pleaded with so many people, 911, LA County Fire, Maria Graken, who literally took every one of my calls and every one of my texts, and I thank her for that. I pleaded for some help, some water drops, and we couldn't get those water drops. And by 5:30 in the evening, that fire exploded. I went down to PCH many times. I didn't have much communication. I went down to PCH many times to look for fire engines. And I found fire engines, rows of fire engines lined right in front of Corral Canyon, waiting for orders. That's what they kept telling me. And there was another resident, Susie Duff, who was with me. And we went to every engine and said, please, go up into Corral Canyon. We're going to lose homes. And they kept saying, we're waiting for orders. And I think that's a common theme. Eventually, we were able to get 5 engines up to the upper bowl of Corral Canyon where I live. Those engines were from out of town. They were from Oxnard, they were from Ventura County. And those guys weren't going to put their lives on the line for us, that's for sure. I pleaded with every captain, and none of them would listen. And I said, we're going to lose homes. And they just sat still. They did not pull hose, they did nothing, they just sat still. And they remained that way the entire night. I went back down, was able to get a couple more engines in, but those engines refused to go to the upper bowl. They said it was too late for the upper bowl, and they went to El Nido only. And I have proof that those engines did not try to save any homes in El Nido either. They sat along Corral Canyon Road, parked, and watched the flames, while residents in El Nido fought their asses off. I apologize, I swore, Supervisor. They fought their asses off with no help from the fire department. And for somebody who loves this fire department and thinks every first responder is a hero, it's discouraging to know that some captains, some engines did not follow orders. What I can tell you, what followed was that around 11:30 at night, there was an urgency for first responders to get to Pepperdine. And as a few homes started to burn in Corral Canyon, those engines all pulled out. And these homes took 3 hours. Some of these homes took 3 hours. We actually have video. It took 3 hours to burn fully, and we had no engines up there to stop those homes from burning. Those engines disappeared and went to Pepperdine. I heard they went to go eat. Maybe they were trying to fight fire at Pepperdine. I don't know. But Pepperdine looks pretty good. Corral doesn't look so good. Early the next morning, when we had fire all throughout Corral Canyon, and those homes were left vulnerable, I was looking for engines. I was looking for one engine. We have our own call firefighter engine, but it was commandeered. I'm sure you heard about that. And it was commandeered to save an LA County fire station. So we saved an LA County fire station, but we lost 22 homes in Corral Canyon as a result. And that's really hard to swallow. When I looked for engines early Saturday morning, there were none in Corral Canyon. We had active fire. We were going to lose so many homes, and residents kicked their ass trying to save these homes, and I was one of them. We had no water. And I know Chief Osby reported to you on that Tuesday or during the fire that water was not a concern. Well, we had no water in Corral Canyon, and I understand that maybe he didn't understand that, but we had 0 water for 4 days. So residents used shovels and dirt. We killed ourselves to save homes. We had no help. And when I went down looking for engines, I couldn't find them along PCH, but you know where I found them? At Pepperdine University. And I went to Chief Insman, who did not know me, and I pleaded. I said, please, give me 1 engine for Corral Canyon. We have homes we're about to lose. And he gave me a hard time, but eventually he came through, and I thank him for that. And he sent engines to Corral Canyon. And slowly but surely, we were able to start getting a handle on that fire. But we had lost 22 homes.
Thank you.
I have a lot more to say. I think my time is up. Is it up?
Yes, it is.
It is up.
8
Okay.
minutes.
Okay. I will follow up with a report. It's going to be a very thorough report because there's so much more to say, Supervisor. I think I would also appreciate the opportunity to sit on the task force. I think I can bring a lot to this. I did back in 2007 with Chief Freeman, and I remember him saying that it was one of the most rewarding experiences of his life, and I would agree with him that it was for me too. I'm not someone here who's going to sit here and complain. I will roll up my sleeves and help as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here, and thank you to the speakers who ceded their time. Speaker 24 has also been given an extra 2 minutes by Speaker 27. So 4 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Richard Gibbs. I'm here because I'm concerned that there's a lot of rumors, a lot of innuendo. There's a lot of stories that are being spread, a lot of conspiracy theories that are being spread around as a result of this fire. I'm not even going to get into the bizarre ones like directed energy weapons and a real estate grab. Just bizarre stuff going on. What I am going to do is list a series of questions that I have and the other people around me have, and I'm just going to rattle them off, and I'm going to enter them into the record. Some of them I know the answer to. I'm sure all of you have the answers to some of them, but what we need to do is see these collated into one spot and carefully answered, and not excuses for any of it. We want to hear where the mistakes were made so they don't happen again, so that we all can have some faith in our government and in our institutions. So I'm going to rattle them off. By the way, I think there needs to be a federal investigation, but we'll come to that. Number 1, why were there no fire trucks on Point Doom or lighting the fire break of PCH when the fire approached? 2, why did the fire department commandeer the truck owned by Corral Canyon homeowners? 3, why were so many fire trucks parked and idle during the fire and immediate aftermath? 4, is it true that Pepperdine's president called someone in state government for help before the fire hit and was told that if he wanted to save Pepperdine, he should tell the students to shelter in place, forcing 8 fire strike teams comprised of 5 engines each to surround the campus because of the fire department policy of lives before property, and hence endangering those lives and ensuring that the rest of Malibu burn. 5, is it true that many homes burned because the fire hydrants were not functioning? 6, is it true that fire hydrants were not functioning due to power being cut off to the pumps and everywhere by Southern California Edison early that morning? 7, is it true that the city of Malibu had inadequate or non-existent backup generators to power those pumps for just such a contingency as most cities in California do? 8, where were all of the resources, hundreds of crews, super scoopers, helicopters, etc., we have seen in other major conflagrations in Malibu? 9, why were firemen ignoring the pleas of countless residents to stop and help them, allowing many homes to burn? 10, where was the Central Command during the fire? 11, why were so many fire crews from out of town clueless as to where to go or how to get there? 12, why was the evacuation so horribly bungled? 13, why weren't people being told they could evacuate towards Ventura on PCH? 14, why did it take far too many dangerous hours to open up additional southbound lanes on PCH, hence alleviating the massive jam of panicked residents forced to go that direction? 15, why did the swarm of police who swamped Malibu immediately after the fire keep supplies from being brought in to help the many residents who recognized how overwhelmed the firemen were and stayed behind to protect life and property? 16, why were CERT teams not activated or even allowed to re-enter the city? 17, why were the doctors of our only emergency care center not allowed to enter to help, yet news crews were given free rein? 18, is it true that some fire chiefs will not allow their trucks to leave to help areas outside of their jurisdiction until they have assurance of payment for the services? 19, why is it that debris removal has taken so long? 20, why do the city and fire departments continue to throw roadblocks in front of people hoping to rebuild? 21, where does the buck stop? In other words, are any governmental agencies at any level held liable for the horrific mismanagement of this horrible disaster? I'll stop there. So
Thank you. And did you, we have a court reporter making a record of everything that's said on the mic, so you don't have to.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, good.
I'll give this to anybody that wants it. I've written it all down.
That would be great. My chief of staff is right there. Great, thank you very much. So let me go back to the numbers that were called that people didn't come up. 2, 4, 6, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14. Oh, I'm sorry, 14 was called. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Okay, 25. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Norm Haney. My background is land development consulting and civil engineering. And I've been working within the city of Malibu for the last, well, since 1980. Special thanks for all of you who come here and on your Saturday, on your day off, to try and help us rebuild our houses. I represent 2 people that lost their houses. Special thanks to Sheila Kuehl and Nicole England, and of course Jefferson Wagner, for the time that they're spending. The question I want to bring up is the contradiction that occurs to people that have lost their homes where other people on the same street have not lost their homes. So those people live in their homes, have an access way, have whatever water available, and live their lives. But the people that have lost their homes, they can't get approval from the fire department because the access is too small or too steep, or the water flow and the pressure is not there. So they can't build their homes because it's unsafe. But 10 other people on the same street in the same area, they can live in their homes, and that's okay. So, you know, either it's a regulatory taking or it's not. Second thing I'd like to bring up is the minimum fire water availability for the fire department is 20,000 gallons of storage on your property. Certainly, if we can't meet the fire flow, we should be able to meet that minimum standard. And the fire department should say, okay, you've met that fire, especially when we realize that there's, in a wildfire, there's very little hydrants that actually have water in it and meet the fire flow and the pressure. So to be able to hook up to a draft hydrant and put fire out by the fire department is a good thing. Sometimes it's the only water available.
Thank you.
So those are the things, and thank you very much for the time.
And I hope you'll do a fuller even inquiry or statement online if you wish to take the time.
I'll put it all in
or just give
writing
us a written thing.
and provide it to all of you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Number 26, 28, 29.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Paul Major. Thank you guys for all being here as well. I've been out here since 1960. My father was an LA County fireman, worked here at Fire Station 71 for 35 years. And I'm used to people being public servants. He would give his right arm to save any home, anywhere, at any time. I believe it was 1970 or 1972, there was a Chief Bragdon on the force at that time. There were comments that he made at the time, most of fires, most of fires usually start in other areas. We're always the victims of these fires from Agur or Calabasas, wherever. And it's just not right to just let them say things like, oh, let it burn to the beach till it's out. It's just unconscionable. But anyways, I just wanted to see that somehow you guys can alleviate the appearance of the heavy-handedness that's going on the rebuild people. You guys are potentially driving out a whole generation of people that may not be able to rebuild or just out of here just because of the heavy red tape going on. Yeah, just see if you can somehow get rid of some of these stumbling blocks for rebuilding people. And it's the appearance of being cold-hearted that I think people are upset about. It's so frustrating to go through these processes that you guys have put up. It's sort of like you're manufacturing the system as you go. And the people individually, one at a time, should not have to make an ordinance for you guys to adopt. You guys should have things already made out and we just sign to them, oh, hey, we're going to clean it up in this manner, or whatever method there is, so that people aren't spending 3/4 of their time trying to apply for some kind of a permit for a cleanup or something. Let's see what else here. Anyways, yeah, I think the waiver idea is good for basic items, and they shouldn't use fire victims as guinea pigs for any sort of ordinances that you guys are dreaming up. I just think it's wrong, and people should be able to somehow get rebuilding process as quick as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Number 30.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Carole Holmes. I've been a resident of this area for over 50 years. My home, my business as a horse ranch was burned to the ground, every single building. I even entered a burning house, my house, to try to save my parrot that I had for 49 years. I wasn't able to because he wasn't cooperating. And I still cry over his loss. That fire was the most vicious, unprecedented fire I have ever been a witness to. The roar that it came over the mountain bordering our property. The winds. We were there when every building was on fire. We had no water. We did not know that the bridge down by Peter Strauss Ranch had exploded and our water was cut off. We had no water to even fight the fire before it got to our place. We have been paying for decades to ensure that we had water. We didn't. We had no fire engines. We had no warnings. We had nothing, yet we lost everything. I had to wear the same clothes for 3.5 weeks because the police would not allow us to get to the disaster centers. When I was finally brought into my son's home, who also fought to save his home in Agora Hills, he managed to save the school across the street. He managed to save all of the houses on his block because he refused to obey the mandatory evacuation. He and one other neighbor saved a whole block of homes and a school I have been a disaster worker with Red Cross, have gone all over the nation, all over outside of the world. I have been recognized for the extreme, wonderful disaster program that I set up in Agora Hills. I've received trophies. All of that's lost. All of it is meaningless now. I know what I'm talking about, but the fire department, I don't know who was in charge, but they lacked experience.
Thank you.
I
Thank
could
you.
go on, but
Well, maybe, and with your son, perhaps you can give an even fuller story so that we can understand more details. Thank you very much, Carole. Number 31. Welcome.
Thank you very much. My name is Nona.
Could you pull the mic down towards your mouth more? Thank you.
It was really loud back there, so I
Oh,
don't
is
wanna-
it?
Yeah. So I'm here on behalf of the equestrian community. I'm a board member of Equestrian Trails Incorporated, Corral 36, in the Santa Monica Mountains. And I just want to bring attention to the plight of the equestrian community. The Santa Monica Mountains has a history of equestrian presence. And I don't want to go into the LCP, which seems to want to push out horses in the mountains, but the fire has created a special need and concern that some of the businesses like Carole's Ranch, there are many home-based businesses, there's trail riding excursions, and there are there's an economy surrounding these businesses that are affected because of the park closures. And the sun is out, the trails will dry up, these businesses have an opportunity to survive, but there's a gap. They didn't have emergency savings. This is what I'm hearing, that they will be forced to close. And I'm just wondering if there are tax dollars. We're not looking for handouts, but I just want to bring attention to this plight, and if there is a pie to divide up, and if there are any resources for them to get back on their feet. People are asking me for information and resources. Thank you very much.
Could send me that question, because I think there are definitely answers. Okay, number 32. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Barbara Burke, and I am a Broad Beach resident. I'm also a local reporter, and I have a couple of questions. My first question is, I'm 8th generation of a family that is firefighters and police, south side of Chicago, totally different environment, but they've seen everything. At some point, is someone going to define the firefighter ethics that are required when there are repeated reports of units standing without responding and telling residents that they, quote, don't have orders, akin to a physician's ethical guidelines? Don't firefighters have the same sort of thing to save a life? The second thing was, if possible, could someone from the cities as well as the county please tell us when the reports that you are conducting will be final and ready for review? Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. As to the second one, there will be work. It could take 4 or 5 months. I'm not sure. The consultants are here, and we want it to be very thorough. But once the recommendations are formed, we're going to go back out to the public with them, because people may agree or not agree or find that there are gaps. You know, my commitment is to you. Hard to fix the past, but I want to really fix the future. Thank you for being here. 33. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm 35, and I'd like to give my time to my husband, number 33, and thank you so much for being here.
All right, 4 minutes. Thank you so much for being here, both of you.
That's remarkable after being married for 36 years. That my wife would give me 2 extra minutes to speak. If we've accomplished nothing else.
She's just showing off in public, I'm just saying. So number 33 and number 35 have been married for 36 years, is that correct?
Correct,
right, good.
and I might add happily.
All right, that's good. You start the time over for this gentleman.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
My name is Bert Ross. I am the former mayor of Fort Lee, New Jersey, and the former head of the New Jersey State Energy Office. So I've been in your shoes, and I want to thank you all for being here on a Saturday. It is the weekend. I also want to thank our mayor and our council people who are here, our city manager, and others in the city government who care enough to be here on a weekend. I'm not here to talk about the rebuilding other than I hope some thought is given to reviewing permits concurrently and not on a sequential basis. I think that would really expedite things. I'm here to talk about future fires. I'm concerned because I hear people in and out of government who say to somebody from the East Coast, well, California fires, they just go together like a horse and carriage, and it's just a matter of time before we have future devastating fires in Malibu. And I find accepting the unacceptable unacceptable. And so the question, all the attention seems to be, what do we do when the fire is right at our doorstep? We have wider gates, and we have greater access, and we have additional water flow, and we get rid of eucalyptus trees, and we plant certain other trees ad infinitum. And to me, it's analogous to if I were the President of the United States, parenthetically, I think I could do a better job, and the entire defense budget was geared toward what we do, we accept the invasion. And as the enemy is approaching our front door, all the money is spent for us to get out on our balconies and to attack the enemy. What I don't understand is why we don't do, and I'm going to just throw out certain options. There's a tremendous area between the coastal towns and the 101. Why we can't clear half a mile where things don't grow, the animals can cross it, it will be a fire break. It will not stop every ember, but it will reduce the scale of a fire so that with the resources we have, the fire would never be devastating like it is. Another approach is we just had a tremendous amount of water. 80% or more went into the Pacific Ocean. With the melting of the ice caps, the Pacific doesn't need additional water. That water is wasted. Israel would take that water and save it and use it. Put a sprinkler system in the mountains and let a half a mile, whatever it is, get wet so when that fire comes, again, it's a wall. Now, somebody says, well, the environmentalists won't hear of it. Well, I'm an environmentalist. First of all, people are part of the environment. Secondly, the mountain is strewn with the bones of dead animals. So if you're for the environment, a fire the likes of which we just had is not good for the environment. And so the number one responsibility for people in government, regardless of the level of government, is to protect its citizens, the safety. And I'm hoping that we no longer accept the unacceptable and we have a plan to stop it. Will it be expensive? Yes. We're talking about easily hundreds of millions of dollars. So I'm not denying that. But the cost of not doing it, to me, is just unacceptable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Speaker 34, 36, 37, 38, 39, 38. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Steve Siegel. I live in an area of County Malibu called Mulholland Highway, and I never hear anybody speaking about that area. I don't know if, I'm sure you're aware that the devastation up there is almost total. There's virtually no houses left there. I lost my house and all my property. The big problem I have is I see the crowd here as mainly people, let's say over the age of 30. And the big issue is that I'm kind of here speaking because the biggest loss for me is going to be my sons who are in their 20s and 30s. They had a studio and some other things at my house, and now that that's gone, they don't feel connected to this community anymore, and they don't feel they have the opportunity to stay here. And most of the entire millennial generation is not able to see a future here in Southern California, especially in a place like Malibu. And they say to me, Dad, you have 2.5 acres, why can't we build something here? We go, they are musicians, they travel all over the country, and everywhere they go, people have studios and other houses and the ability to have other, structures on their home. But they can't do that here because they see what the permitting structure is like. So I live in coastal, so that, of course, compounds it. And in addition to which, the last thing I'll tell you in terms of this generation is that they stayed with me until the fire was coming down the hillside, and we had a pump and a hose to fight the fire. And I was arguing with my son because we could see the flames, that we were not really going to be too smart to stay there. I probably would have stayed and fought the fire with them. The people who died in Woolsey were a mile from my house. So it probably would not have been here. And so I do want to thank the fire department because they did come into my driveway and say, what the heck are you guys doing here? This was about noon, and my son said, we'd like to stay and help fight the fire. We have a pump and a tank. And the fireman said, if you want to help us, you should get out of here. We're going to have strike units up here. And no one ever came up Mulholland Highway at all. And everything burned up there. And my son had, I'll just leave you with this. My sons and many of their generation believe that the only way you can fight fires in Malibu is by staying and fighting them and risking your lives to do it. So it's something to think about with the younger generation is not going to be here. And if they are here, they don't have a lot of confidence in our ability to fight the fires. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Speaker 39, welcome.
Thank you, and thank you everybody that came today to support this group. My name is Matt Haynes. I have been a resident of Corral Canyon for 30 years, and there's a lot of things I'd like to talk about. With only 2 minutes, I'm going to focus on one thing. In 2007, I was a contractor building some houses in Corral Canyon, and I went out and bought a fire engine that I ended up using in protecting properties in the Corral Canyon during the 2007 fire. As a result of that, Chief Freeman, Chief Osby, and the fire department, other individuals of the fire department, the County of Los Angeles Supervisor's Office, Susan Nisman, Zev Yaroslavsky formed a working task group such as you have here. As a result of that, many great things occurred from those meetings that we had over the course of that year. Paul Moore mentioned a lot of it earlier. But what I want to focus in on was the Call Firefighter program that was created by LA County. I sat with Chief Osby at Starbucks here in Malibu. We hammered out a deal where we created this program for the Corral Canyon people. That program has been going on for 10 years now. And you guys heard a lot of stories about what happened with Engine 271 getting commandeered. And just quickly on that subject, I went to Station 71. It was chaos when that fire was coming off. We came down with Engine 271 because at that time, Corral Canyon wasn't threatened. A general order went out across the county for all call fire engines to get staffed with full-time firefighters. An out-of-area battalion chief saw our engine and followed his order. It took us off that engine and put full-time firefighters on there and used our resources to go fight the fire. We came back to Corral Canyon with 6 call firefighters, and we accomplished a lot of good during that 6-8 hours that the fire hit Corral Canyon. We had boots on the ground, we had guys on hoses. In El Nido, we had 4 call firefighters, and we lost 1 house in El Nido. The Upper Bowl, unfortunately, only had 1 guy up there. And so what I want to focus in on right now, across Malibu, you're hearing all kinds of stories of people saying, we want to call a firefighter program, we want to do our own thing. You know, I started out as a vigilante firefighter myself. We became trained by the LA County Fire Department, and it's been a program that not only during a big fire, but we've been very successful in fighting small fires, not during the fire seasons that occur in our neighborhoods. So what I would like to ask the county to focus in on is some sort of a model or a working group or task that can talk to people in the city of Malibu and discuss with them how you can work with the fire department to form more call firefighter programs, expand the ones that we have, because you are going to have people that are going to stay behind now and try to protect their homes. And the problem with that is their lives are going to be at stake. And we have to have trained people stay behind, people that know what they have to do, people that have the proper equipment. You don't want people to have the ability to stay behind and then put their lives at risk. So I was really asking you guys to look into that program with the fire department and come up with some sort of model that might work for the people in Malibu.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Speaker number 40, 41, 42, 43. Did they fall asleep at that table? 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49. Oh, please come forward. Remind me what the number might be. 47. 47 is welcome.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here on a Saturday. My name is Saeed Zohari. I represent, my company's name is Golden Globe Concepts Consulting and Design Services. I've been approached by a few residences regarding rebuilding, and I appreciate what the residences have gone through. It's been a very heavy experience. Specifically, one of them, Mr. Lee, I'm recoding from his text, by imposing new fire code, rebuild like for like is meaningless, and they're going to drive many families out of their homes and make their land worthless. That's a direct comment from one of the residences. My comment about it is, knowing what the residences have gone through, and if they're given a chance to rebuild, they're going to have some time to just readjust of the event, and not, and many of them are not familiar with the reconstruction or the construction service altogether. They may need to do some research for rebuild. And my first comment is the cleanup of the removal, where they're taking the foundations out. I think from a design trade service, they should be treated like case-by-case basis. I know some of the foundations may not be good, but the first comment I tell them is, can you keep the foundation? And they say, well, if the state wants to clean it up, they'll take out the foundation regardless. And that can be a very cost factor for their property rebuild. So my only suggestion is that if they're given case-by-case basis for the removal, rather than saying, yeah, we remove it. And the other thing is, if you remove it, then you have all these deadlines, like one after the other, and for them to deal with that, it's kind of a little bit too congested for the experience they've gone through. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Speaker 48, 49, 50, 51. Welcome.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Bruce Silverstein. I'll be very brief. I was glad to hear that this session was going to occur, and another one, and when I saw it was from 10 to 3, I thought that was phenomenal. That meant that all these people who have stories to tell were going to tell their stories, and they were going to be heard at this listening session. I was just very discouraged to see that this is being done like a bureaucratic meeting where there's 2 minutes per person. These people's time, what they went through, they deserve more than 2 minutes per person. They deserve however long they need. And I know that this is all your time that you're volunteering, but everyone here has been through a tragedy, and they deserve to let their stories be known, which is what I thought this process was for. Thank you.
Thank you. I know since I have chaired a lot of commissions, committees, and boards, and we have a lot of hearings, that it is important for this group of leaders to hear the experiences. But that is not really how it gets sort of solidified in the record. Because my experience is when people come to the mic, even if they talk for 10 minutes, they haven't done as much or said as much as they could, which is why we decided to, in addition, set up the website, because that allows you could file 20 pages with us, along with pictures and maps and anything you like. And that will be, I think, a more effective way. I know it feels bureaucratic to you, but I didn't want people also to have to come and they drew, speaker 20, thinking they would get to speak, and they're here for 5 hours. So it's my choice, and I apologize that it feels short. And I want to really encourage you to give us full information, because that's what's going to really and probably be 95% of the information that we can incorporate in making recommendations. We're also receiving a lot from people who were not able to be here today, or, took advantage really of the website. It's not just, I think that's going to be our primary source of information along with what's recorded here today. But I apologize for the way it feels. I know it feels very necessary to be heard. So it's my compromise and my fault, and I apologize. Speaker 52. 53, 54, 55. Welcome.
Thank you for being here. Number 55. My name is Michael Omeri. I'm a licensed general contractor, live and work in this area since 1980. I'm also on a 40-acre ranch on the 32700 block of Mulholland Highway, where we've been doing for the past 10 years research and development of stormwater. We have a stormwater reservoir, actually, and doing studies on the potential for harvesting our local stormwater. Have submitted some 10 years ago a broad plan after the 2007 fire to harvest 200,000 acre-feet of water per rainy season and store them in our local mountains. There are so many ideal storage areas that need minimal work, from local just ground work that you're going to clear from the bottom of where you're going to be storing. And we can accomplish this in a year. We can be doing 100,000, 50,000 acre-feet of storage capacities between now and next year. Sheila, I think I saw your motorcade pass by us on Thursday, and you were waving to me and my help.
I'm sorry, I've never had a motorcade in my life.
Maybe somebody was.
Could be. Nancy Pelosi looks just like me.
I figured just a politician would wave to someone in the rugged mountains up there. We have a 2,000 front on Mulholland Highway, mostly vertical cuts 50 feet high. But also above that, the southern slopes go up to 1,000 feet distance at a 40-degree level. So the Mulholland Highway has been a nightmare for us to keep the public safe, along with the road department, and to keep, of course, we gave up on our access to the ranch, but just to keep the public and the road safe. I contacted NRCS because we run a business of clean water technologies. We have developed an ecology healer filter reactor that right now is adopted by the California State Transportation Department of Transportation, and are getting a wonderful job. NRCS has a program that will reimburse the county 75% for projects benefiting the local owners of ranchers like ours, and for watershed, post-fire watershed protection plans. We definitely need them there, and of course somewhere else, everywhere else. Please remember, we've gone through nightmare. We have been working over 10 years on building up of the inventory of our ecology healer filter reactor. We piloted the project with the state universities and the state water institution for the past 5 years, and we've been building inventory to $80 million value. That's wholesale value. It was all went up in smoke in this fire.
Thank you.
Now we're fighting to keep the soil on the ranch. Please help us. I will send you some emails on all of the stuff we've been going through.
Thank you very much. Please do. 56, 57. Welcome.
My name is Roy Jimenez. I'm the Executive Director of KHD-TV Broadcasting. We have the authority from the FCC to locate, underwrite a plan on how to build a disaster recovery facility that favors first responders. We've identified that site just above Zuma Ridge, on Zuma Ridge, 160 acres, where we plan to place a communications facility for backup communications for first responders, our own backup communications facility that could be placed in each canyon, corral, the Baller area, Canaan, and further the other direction. Tranca, sorry. And so I've been studying these solutions for more than 10 years. I do have the federal ruling in order to deploy and implement these services and underwrite with an infrastructure development tax. So we are proposing that there should be a double engine facility with backup communications in Corral, in Baller, with backup data communications there, a separate antenna site over on Borno, and the main facility on 160 acres that would back up these communications. This is my proposal. My name is Roy Jimenez, and I'm at khdtv.net. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you want to give us a fuller picture of that on the online site, that would be great. I mean, this is recorded, but anything more that you want to say about that, it would be very helpful.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. 58, 59, 60. Does anybody have a number between 60 and 70? Oh, are you 60?
I'm 60, yeah.
Okay, great.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. A lot of topics already been talked about today. My name's Keegan Gibbs, Malibu resident, lost my home at Point Doom. The issue of Pepperdine and the amount of resources that came here is my biggest concern today. The timing of which Western Malibu burned coincided almost directly with when all the resources were called over to Pepperdine. And I'm aware Pepperdine had a shelter-in-place policy that has been a long-standing policy for about 20 years here. And the excuse that you can't get 500, 1,000, 2,000 kids off the property, I think, is inexcusable when you have an evacuation order that had already been in place for 12 hours. That shelter-in-place needs to be changed. I would like to see LA County put pressure on Pepperdine to make that change, since Pepperdine is outside of Malibu's jurisdiction, or Malibu City. I think that's really important because there will be another fire. Pepperdine has a very fire-resistant structure protocol, has very good brush clearance, and for there to be 8 strike teams, 30 to 35 trucks, and 100 to 150 fire personnel here, while the Western Malibu didn't see anybody, I think is inexcusable and needs to change for the future. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Does anyone have a number between 60 and 70? 70 and 80? 80 and 90? 90 and 100? Numbers above 100? Anybody? So everyone who has a number to speak has spoken? What number do you have, sir?
Only 20, but may I speak?
Did you say 20?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Anyone who has a number lower than 60 should let me know as well. Thank you. I think we called them, but not everybody was in their seat yet. Welcome.
Thank you. My name's Bob Shore. I've been a lifelong resident of Malibu. I'm grateful everybody showed up here today. I don't know how people were notified that you'd all be here, but I think this auditorium would be filled if we were all notified better that this was going to transpire. Anyway, I lost a house in a fire 14 years ago, everything I owned. I saved my house in this last fire with a garden hose. And as far as I'm concerned, there was no help from the sheriffs or the fire department in my neighborhood for over 3 days. We had no water to fight the fire. There were many issues. However, what I'm concerned about at this time is yesterday I couldn't get out of my neighborhood to pick up my daughter because what's happening is because of all the erosion in the mountains, there's some great amount of aggregates, mud, rocks coming down into my neighborhood and other neighborhoods. I live in Ramirez Canyon, and I've called out the County of LA, we had the City of Malibu, and we had the Conservancy, a meeting there. And one of the bridges we have to go over, the aggregate and mud has come up about 7-8 feet. Now, this winter is a very light rain winter compared to other winters. 3 years ago, we had a substantial winter, and in 2010, we had a substantial winter, about 3 times the amount of rain that we've had this winter. Yesterday, I couldn't get out of our neighborhood to pick up my daughter at school. We've had no hopes of help in any way to remove this aggregate. It's come up under the bridges we go over to where the water's now flowing over the bridges. We had a rampant river running down Ramirez Canyon, which recently flooded 3 homes with 1 foot to 2 foot of mud. This is going to happen now and from here on in with heavy rains, and we need some assistance for that. And we appreciate any help we can get. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Any other folks holding numbers under 60 that didn't get called? Anyone else who has a number to speak that hasn't spoken? Please come forward, tell me your number so I can mark it off.
I'm number 12.
12, all right.
Hi, my name's Gary Fulltime. I've been a resident here in Malibu and Corral Canyon for over 40 years. I lost my home in the Woolsey Fire. Everything, all of my possessions, 3 classic cars. I would hope that this panel can address the state and the federal government to help us rebuild and with finances other than FEMA, and open up the permit process to make it less complicated for those of us that are not involved in building and construction. The residents are always worried about fraudulent contractors or the work being mismanaged, and we're not getting any direction, and it's very difficult to find or solicit or pick the correct contractors and developers and architects, let alone manage the running around. Some of us have businesses outside of the Malibu area and can't devote the time to run the paperwork and go through the process, and it's very, very complicated. So we need some other type of management to streamline the process and make it easier for the taxpayers that have been paying for years and years here in California. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else got a number under 60 that hasn't spoken yet? Any other folks holding any speakers' numbers that haven't spoken yet? Okay, so I don't know whether other folks will show up, but I was going to take a 20-minute break and come back. That's okay with everybody. All right, we'll be back in 20 minutes.
It's going to be tough.
It's going to be tough standing up.
I was going to say.
Lunch is in the green room, so if anybody...
It's good seeing you. I should have said more. Your neighbor's lived there 45 years.
2 minutes is really not enough.
I didn't come prepared. I didn't come prepared.
Excuse me.
I didn't know. I just happened to be lucky. I was
But can I ask just a quick question? The bridge, is it privately owned?
It is a private canyon, Ramirez Canyon. It is a gated community, and the city's washing their hands from any responsibility.
I'll see you on Friday. Very busy week. You're having a very busy week.
I am having a very busy week. Sorry.
This is the woman that owned the horse farm. That was tragic.
I go back to the
Can I get
It started off like, I wrote something yesterday called The Guillotine. And it was like, you ever read the
About?
Two Cities?
Sure, of course. Yeah, take your time.
Bert, you are a genius. I wouldn't go that far. Even my mother didn't say that. Teresa, how are you enjoying it?
Yeah.
the system?
I didn't go. I have the architect for myself. So, first thing is, what he told them pretty clearly do the 10% and build the basement. A week later, so my architect spent about $6,000 pouring up wall. We were going to put the laundry room down in the basement because I'm getting older. We have an elevator, and which has bathrooms and everything like that. These storage right now is on the top of the garage. Life has to share. So now we're going to forum, and the answer is because last week they no, it can't be a basement. It has to be under 6 foot. Under 6 foot, not a basement. So I just spent this morning. Thank you.
Please check us out.
No, it's just that they got apparently the planning commission, somebody got some kind of a rule that
We're going to do
they're meeting. By the way, I don't care.
Great job.
The issue is,
I appreciate that.
we spent $6,000. Well, I was.
Sorry about you guys' loss, too. Courageous. Sir. Was that right? Yeah, you kept your hair tight?
I've lived here 32 years.
Yeah.
So well, actually 37. And we have
we are
daughter,
too.
my oldest daughter's 30, and my youngest is 22. They both, all three of them, have gone through Malibu High School. I was just saying, I've been here 32 years in Malibu. And then the one's almost 40. I lost my whole house on the worst street in Malibu, winding Cuthbert Road.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
42 houses
I can't
burned.
even.
42 houses burned.
I can't even imagine what the.
some slack, some waiver, something. And we're going to go back and talk about this. The head of Public Works is here. Our chief of our fire department is here. The head of our planning department is here. Everybody that you would hope would be hearing this. And since they all work for me, they're very responsive. I don't get me wrong, I don't hire and fire anybody. I'm just an elected, you know, but they give us a lot of deference. And that's sort of why I wanted to be the one to pull us together today to do this. I'm very grateful to the members of the task force for agreeing to serve on it. It's going to make a difference. And for being here today, and next Sunday we're going to be at King Gillette. So if you have second thoughts or friends that just couldn't bring themselves to talk about this today, or anybody, we're going to be at 10 a.m. at King Gillette next Sunday, not Saturday, but Sunday, March 3rd. So let's go back to see if any of you signed up to speak and didn't get to speak yet. We got pretty high in the numbers, but there were plenty of lower numbers that people did not take their slots. So has anyone signed up to speak that did not yet speak? All right. Not very many people, so why don't we, if we could hear the numbers, please. 120 and 50? 50, okay. 56? What else? 48? Any other number? 41? Okay, 41 wins. Oops, maybe not.
Well, 43, but I'll yield my time to 50.
43 yields to 50. Got it.
41 yields to 50.
41 yields to 50. Okay, so 41 and 43 would be next. So let us ask Speaker 50 to come forward and would have then 6 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. My name is Jane Albrecht. I'm president of the Malibu Democratic Club, but I'm here to present, I'm also on the steering committee of Operation Recovery, which is nonpartisan. I'm here to propose one solution and make a recommendation, and I would ask all of you here to take it seriously. I would love input from all of you. When I looked into the problems here, what happened in Malibu and the Woolsey fire, I looked broader. I'm sort of a policy person on top of everything else, and it became clear that the single greatest problem we had was that statewide, California does not have enough firefighters or enough equipment to deal with 2 and 3 major incidents at the time, and yet it's not unknown that we have 2 or 3 or more major wildfires at a time. In looking at this, this problem has existed for a long time. Malibu was largely left unprotected, not because we don't have great firefighters. We have great firefighters, some of the most dedicated, talented in the world. But there weren't enough. And as I said, when I looked into it, it's gone back at least 20 years. I believe we've got the same number of firefighters in LA County, if I'm not mistaken, as we did decades ago. So in looking how to solve this problem, we don't need additional firefighters year-round full-time. We need some. But it can take up to 15 to 20,000 embedded throughout the state to really have an effective firefighting force. It's the classic role of a reserve force. And so I came up with the idea of the California Fire Reserve Corps. And it is not a volunteer corps. It is a fully paid, certified, fully trained firefighting and natural disaster fighting corps. It's based on the concept of the National Guard, but it's not like the National Guard. You'd have people embedded in every community throughout the state. So in the Camp Fire, they could have called up on much quicker notice, 1,500, 2,000 people. It also means that the fire department can stay on offense and not go to defense. Essentially what happened in Malibu, based on what Chief Osby and others have said and what I've studied, is that they ran out of equipment, they ran out of men. And so basically, having the California Fire Reserve Corps would ensure that no community is left undefended. So basically, it's a game changer. If we do everything else, if you analyze it, there's many good things that we should do, and there's things I'll learn when the study comes out. But if we do better brush clearance, which we should do, if we do better building codes, if we do better zoning, which we should do, and if we take climate control measures, which we should do, but there's not enough firefighters to show up, then we're going to have the same thing over and over again. The good news is right now, this is something that CAL FIRE should take up in connection with the county and the city. The good news is right now we do have the money to do it. There's a $14.5 billion rainy day fund that's currently available in the state budget. And in 2019-2020, there's supposed to be a $15 billion surplus. We could do it for a fraction of that. And once it's established, it will pay for itself. Why? Because every time you have an incident like this, it costs the state and county governments billions of dollars. So and what will happen if you have enough people and enough equipment is these huge conflagrations will no longer be annual events. They will be rare events because you'll be able to nip the fires in the bud. I have a paper here, it's a summary, and I would really enjoy talking to many of you. I want input. I've gotten input, but I need more. And if I could, I'd like to circulate it to everyone here. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
If you'd give it to Lisa, she'll make sure it gets handed out.
This is just a one-page summary, but right now on the website of the Malibu Democratic Club, there's a 10-page concept paper which answers questions like, why can't we do this within the California National Guard? Why isn't the California Conservation Corps enough? And I think the other thing was we have on-call firefighters, why this is different, and things like that, and why beefing up the Forest Service firefighters alone will not do it. But this will. To me, it's a linchpin. If we do everything else and we do this, it's a game changer. The whole relationship of California to fighting wildfires will change. If we don't do this, then we're going to be here in another 5-10 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Speaker number 48. Welcome.
I want to thank all of you for taking your time today to come to hear us and to listen to what our concerns are. My name is Deborah Rubenacher. I've lived in Crowd Canyon since 1980. I've been through a few fires. I lost my house in 2007. This time around we stayed and we were able to save the guest house. And I know Paul Moore is my neighbor, and I know he's already spoken to you about Crowd Canyon. And so I'm going to kind of piggyback on what he didn't get to, and that was the repopulation. We received water 3 days after the fire, electricity 7 days after. And in Malibu Bowl, where I live, people were not allowed to come back until 14 days. I'm calling Sheila Kill's office. We sent pictures saying there's no work being done. We were referred to the fact they were doing Edison poles or whatever. There were 2 Spectrum trucks up there working on the canyon. No one else. We took pictures, Paul took videos, and we continued to say, why don't you let these people come home? Some of them lost their houses. They need to heal. They need to be able to go home. We had police, sheriffs down at the bottom of the canyon, and initially, if you had ID, you could come and go, and then it became a hard closure. Didn't matter if you were arson watch, didn't matter if you were CAL FIRE, you could not cross the roadblock. We didn't have cell service, except for one spot right above PCH, but when they had the hard closure in El Nido, they moved it up to El Nido. The second 300 families couldn't get home where I live in Malibu Bowl. We couldn't make phone calls any longer because we couldn't go down to PCH. It was the most frustrating experience to know that neighbors were trying to get home to their homes and they weren't allowed 14 days after the fire. Malibu Park, Point Doom had much more damage than we had. Those areas were able to repopulate, and we were not. That was a travesty, and I'm sure if we could have found the right person to talk to, we could have cleared it up, but we did not know. The city of Malibu says we are not in their area. Lost Hills we were referred to. We were told that that was not their decision. We called Sheila Kuehl's office, and they said it was out of their control. They're just following what other people are telling them. We had no direct line to say it's safe for these people to come home. The roads are clear. Nothing's being done. Let them come home. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That will all be recorded, but if you have more detail that you want us to have, especially Corral Canyon, because we've certainly heard from you guys, not only, Be sure to post more online if you would, if there's anything else you think of or want to add, because this is very good information. I mean, it's very bad, but it's very good information for us. Speaker number 56, welcome.
Thank you, and thank all of you for coming and listening to us. I do not have a prepared speech like I wish I had. All I have with me are some general notes, so I'm just going to kind of jabber notes that I've copied that I will try to organize it and send something email that makes a little more sense. First notes, old-fashioned air raid sirens I think is actually an absolutely wonderful idea. Training for local able-bodied people, like has been suggested here with a volunteer source, I think is an outstanding idea. Word needs to go out to this case, the Sheriff's Department that had this hard roadblock to everybody, that there needs, and with this, there needs to be some method like our old-fashioned dolphin stickers that we had on our cars. We were always assured would let us through any roadblocks. The problem I saw with the roadblocks is they were given this hard closure, no exceptions. All the sheriffs were from someplace else besides Malibu. There were hundreds of sheriffs from somewhere else. They had their orders, absolutely no exceptions when there should have been exceptions. I heard Red Cross was turned back a number of times. The local government needs to have control during these emergencies. This should not just be handed over once it's declared a disaster area. It's the state's business. There needs to be, it's like a bureaucracy. It gets too big and everything it starts to fall apart. Control needs to stay down more on a local level. What worked, the reverse 911, that was my first notice about 6 a.m., worked great. We should keep it and encourage it. I had one note that what did work, that was the reverse 911. What didn't work, and my biggest complaint, is the lack of foresight when the fire jumped the 101, why that was not stopped there. The fire departments that did respond to my area, again, we're all from out of the area. The few trucks that came up as I stayed and battled till I couldn't stay anymore, were for someplace else. They refused to go. I made several suggestions. They said they had their orders. They're not going anywhere until they get their orders. And I'm sure you've heard that a number of times. I realize I'm out of time here. I'll just be quick. Neighborhood, the super certificate type of thing, probably similar to the volunteer fire department. People should be allowed to sign a waiver, sign away their life. If they're willing to stay and fight, let them stay and fight. You know, as long as they sign, you know, relieve the city of responsibility. If they die at it, it's, you know, that's their choice.
Thank you.
I'll let it go at that. And again, the dolphin sticker is a nice idea. I think it should be resurrected and enforced. Thank you. I'll try and put this in more coherent form.
That would be great. And if it repeats what you said, that's fine with me too. But we do have it on the record. Okay. Thank you. So is there any, the next speaker I have has number 120. Is there anyone with a number lower than that that hasn't spoken yet? All right, speaker 120.
My name is Simon T., and I'm a resident, past resident of Topanga and Malibu. First, my heart goes out to all the people that lost their homes and or were damaged. It was a travesty. After the fire happened, my background is broadcasting, radio and television, and so I flew the Woolsey fire, and I could not believe how even more devastating it was than people thought. 98,000 acres is a lot of property, and I went to a Malibu meeting and then to a Calabasas meeting shortly afterwards, and I couldn't believe how angry people were, and it was very understandable. So I decided to maybe show people in the community, primarily the leaders of Topanga and of Calabasas and Malibu, what the fire was like from the air. So I flew them 26 times around the Malibu fire. And the general consensus was 1,700 homes were damaged and destroyed, 57,000 were saved. 98,000 acres, and they had 250,000 people evacuated without any injuries. So it was pretty amazing. moving forward, the reason I'm speaking this morning is one thing that became very obvious to me after 26 trips was the future. The bad news is that Malibu, the Malibu Mountains, 2/3 of the mountains have been destroyed. The worst news is that all that's left is Calabasas, Topanga, eastern Malibu, and the Palisades. If a wind-driven fire starts at Topanga and Mulholland, it takes roughly 2.5 hours to reach the ocean. The Sheriff Department has estimated it'll take 7 hours to evacuate. So in closing, I ask that the consultants address the issue of avoiding a catastrophic situation. People have to evacuate, and they have to have a game plan and be able to communicate to those people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Was there another hand of a person who hasn't spoken yet? Please come forward. Thank you. Just so I can mark it off, what was the number?
58.
Okay.
Okay, Paul Cox, lost my home in Corral Canyon. The one thing that I wanted to share was I remember during the Thomas Fire, there were days where we were getting notice of Malibu, be prepared to evacuate. When I had a trip planned for months to New York, leaving very early Friday morning of I think it was the 9th. I woke up at 4 a.m., 4:30, was being prepared to leave, turned on my phone. There was it wasn't until around 6 that we got a call from a neighbor that said, Decker Canyon had been evacuated. And I was literally about to get in my car, and my thinking was, well, we would have been forewarned if we were getting ready to evacuate. Does that mean we're I didn't know if it had just jumped to 101 or what. Anyway, long story short, I got on that plane. My wife at 8 a.m. or whatever was given the formal evacuation, and the kind of confluence of disarray that led to. Unfortunately, when it got so close to the 101 or just jumped to 101, we weren't given a mass, be prepared to evacuate. I would have nixed that New York trip, and I would have stayed, gotten stuff out of the house that is irreplaceable, and I would have at least attempted some sort of a fight, like many of the homeowners did. My wife just ran out of the house, because somewhat of it seemed from her perspective, I was already gone, that it was, it's imminent that this is going to happen, and that's it.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Anybody else signed up to speak and has a number that hasn't spoken yet? Okay. Well, I think if it's okay with you, I'll let some of my task force go. I'll hang out for a while in case other people show up. And as you know, we have another meeting on Sunday the 3rd, starting at 10 a.m. at King Gillette. We were talking to each other during the break, obviously, about how difficult this is. I think a number of people signed up to speak and have their stickers, but it was very, very difficult for them to just tell their story. And that's one of the reasons that we set up the ability to just do it so you didn't have to talk in front of other people if you didn't want to, etc. I want to thank you all very much. You don't need to hang out if you don't want to, or you can... More people who want to speak? Oh, sorry. Other people who signed up to speak who haven't spoken yet?
Number 62.
Number 62? I don't see anybody with... Oh.
Can I have 30 additional seconds?
Yes, anybody with a number who wants to speak and hasn't spoken yet, just tell me your number. or
Can I get 30
just
seconds just to add my notes? I've spoken already once.
let me let this woman who hasn't spoken yet speak. And actually, it'd probably be better for us to have your notes, like either written, just hand them to us and we'll read them and make them part of the record. Because it's easier for us really to incorporate the written material, though, because this all has to be transcribed. And so it will be, but hi, welcome.
Hi. I thought this was going to be a small group.
It is a small group. Just think of us as a small group.
What do they say? Think of you all in your underwear and we'll be fine. So.
Yes, exactly. Would you put the mic closer to your mouth so we can, everybody can hear? I know it's loud in the back, but not as loud up here.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. My name's Kaliko Orion. I've lived in Malibu for 28 years, not as a homeowner, but as a renter. Our home and almost everything we owned is gone, possibly from the Woolsey Fire, possibly from circumstance, or maybe from the mismanagement and unpreparedness of those who were supposed to protect us. I don't know because no one's giving us the full story. I would like to know what agency you think is responsible for providing truthful and complete answers to our community. I'm entitled to know why my home burned as firemen sat at the bottom of Canaan and were assumably ordered to do nothing. I don't believe that our emergency responders deliberately stood by and watched our homes go up in flames, but it sure did look that way. And until agencies communicate otherwise, that remains the perception. I'm entitled to know why, as my neighborhood went up in flames, there was, for the most part, no sirens, no sounds of walkie-talkies, no zooming of emergency personnel racing to get to fires. Why was PCH so gridlocked that our only way out of Malibu was compromised? Why was there an utter lack of communication to our community from our city? It's unacceptable that I had to get news from social media. I would like to know why, when so many of us were broken after the fires and needed answers and empathy. Sorry.
It's okay. We're all sitting here in our underwear listening to you.
I would like to know why, when so many of us were broken after the fires and needed answers and empathy, our city officials and the heads of various agencies thought it was a good idea to get on a stage and congratulate each other for jobs well done. They proceeded to speak at us like we were a bunch of kids in kindergarten, chastising us like toddlers when our emotions got the better of us and we spoke out of turn. A meeting at which none of our questions were adequately addressed, a meeting at which the offensive requirement to write questions on a 3x5 index card added insult to injury, questions on cards so that a panel could pick the topic to discuss and reword a question to suit their agenda. Organization, order, and crowd control should not take precedence over our voices. And a panel's discomfort of our questions just means they all need to do a better job at keeping us safe and informed. Whatever was done did not work on every possible level. There was no protection, no communication. In the aftermath, there is no empathy, no one taking responsibility, no concentrated effort between agencies to afford needed concessions and regulations so that homeowners can rebuild. I'm not a homeowner, and even I am aware of this re-victimization of homeowners in our community. So I ask you to help us understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who, yes, please come forward.
Supervisor, I have 10 seconds about a health concern. May I address?
Say again?
I have just a 10-second comment about a health concern. May I address the task force?
We have another speaker. I'm sorry, will you come forward and tell me what you just said? What he said about a
Health concern.
Did you say a health concern?
I do have a health concern, if you don't mind me addressing. I'm not going to continue what I spoke about earlier. I'll do that in writing. Just regarding the debris removal, there are 22 homes around my home that are all gone. And they are removing the debris. And so my family and I have been home, and this morning my wife and kids took the dog out for a walk, and they were removing the debris literally a couple hundred feet from us, and they came back with sore throats. Those of us who are living in our neighborhoods are not warned about the debris removal. We are never given any sort of notification about which day, which date those debris removals will happen. I think it's very important for everyone's best health to notify all residents who are living in the neighborhood that they're about to do debris removal and how long that will last. Because for me, I'm now contemplating relocating my family for a couple days. But I have 22 homes that are lost, so it would be nice for me to know when that timeline will take place. And I'm sure everyone else would appreciate that too. So
good point, thank you.
Thank you.
So there's another speaker? Yes, please, come forward.
What an intimidating group.
Welcome.
I'm just kidding. There's nothing that intimidates me anymore. My name is Carrie Clasby, and I'm an organic farmer at the top of Pacific Coast Highway, Point Doom. I'm a tenant farmer at Sterling Farms, the old Malibu fig ranch. Does anyone remember it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I took it over from the Cunninghams, who have been there for 75 or 80 years. Alan Cunningham recommended me. So on Friday, November 9th, I have an organic produce delivery business. That's why I'm late. I was delivering to Malibu Farm and Nobu and to Soho House produce. And on November 8th, I was listening to KBOO, and I was up all night. And we had started on Wednesday or Thursday really coming down hard on debris, on anything that could catch on fire. We're very fastidious about it anyway. Hey, Mickey. My farmhand, Caesar, and I, there's a LA Times article about my story. He did a pretty good job about it. It was called, in December, Farmer and Forager Rebuilds After Fire. So we started building firewalls with the dirt. We rototilled. I had about 8 crops in the ground. The farm had been left for a while due to lack of resources, and the farmer got sick, so there was a lot of rehab that I've been doing. And I built a farm stand, and I have trucks, refrigerated trucks, and I have a home and 50 years worth of stuff, you know. So we were up all night. We were up all night. I had generators set up at my water, at my well. This is why people who have gone through this don't want to come. Mm. It's because it brings up the trauma, and you know, I'm a pretty strong woman, and mm-hmm. I took care of my mother who had Alzheimer's and my dad, and I've done a lot of work. But you know, you heard Kaliko. She's one of the best chicken farmers. She lost all of her eggs, and I know it's not your fault. I'm not here to place blame. I just feel like a fool that I didn't know better, or I was in the middle of PCH begging. Are there any firefighters here? Could you raise your hand? Are there any? Do you remember me?
I wasn't assigned to the fire, but I did stay.
I just want to know what happened. So we stayed up all night. We made firewalls. We rototilled everything that looked like it could burn. I had 3 containers. One was filled with my catering business. The other was filled with my farm equipment and heirloom seeds that I've been saving, and, you know, stuff. So I had generators set up for my water pump and hoses, and I spent all Friday watering the roof. And I know it was like the water was evaporating from my roof as we spoke. My guys were there. And I had an empty truck, you know, and we were exhausted. And at one point I was like, I knew I should load up my stuff out of the house into that truck, but I looked at my guys and it was like they couldn't do another thing. couldn't even ask them to do that because it was so much stuff and it was so heavy. And so the fire turned, you know. It was off in the hills behind. If you know where I am, it's Dr. Marwan's up there with his, is Dr. Marwan here?
No.
Well, he has like this Indian, what would you call that? It's this palatial sort of Indian thing. And
right.
So, thank you. She has the best eggs. So,
thank you, though.
Dr. Marwan was up there, and I saw the fire going across, you know, and I posted on Facebook this picture of the geography. They had a map, and there was the fire in Thousand Oaks and over here, and I'm like, here I am with the X. But I didn't know what would happen. So I had a delivery to Italy, you know, the Emporium down in, and I'm up on top of the roof watering down, and the chef called me, and he's like, where's our delivery? So I said, it's coming. We had loaded up the trucks.
Thank you.
Done? Am I?
Well, it's a bunch of time, and
I'm fine, done. I just wanted to know if I could talk to the firemen and ask them what happened, because I was in the middle of PCH. And
well, part of the reason that we're doing the task force is because there has to be a major report on what happened. And so it's not answered yet. That's why this...
Well, I understand. What I'm saying is that what I would like to do is ask those men, as I begged 10 or 12 firefighters when I'm in the middle, could you come up? I was right across the street. Can you ask the chief? Can you? And they were like, no. I just want to know why. What was it, allocated resources to someone else? Dr. Marwan had a fire truck up there. So
well,
that's all.
We want to know too, but there's not an answer for you right here today.
No, I'm not asking.
I understand that's your question. And any other questions and anything else you want to tell us?
Yeah, no, that's it. I didn't know there was a time limit. All right. Do you have any questions for me?
No, ma'am, we don't.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the cry.
We have tissues. We have tissues too.
I know, I got them.
And I told them there's no crying in the task force. It's all for them. Just like Tom Hanks said. Any other folks who signed up to speak and have not spoken yet? Okay. I'm going to hang out for a while in case other folks come in. But members of my task force, I don't need to all stay if you want to. Thanks. All the way back to Ventura.
Can I just make one other comment, please?
Come forward.
Speaking for myself, and after listening to Carrie, my biggest issue is the lack of communication. I've lived through many fires in Malibu. I've seen the work of our emergency responders. I have watched them sleep, you know, on the ground as they were doing shifts. I have no argument. I love our emergency responders. But the problem was nobody communicated with us. Nobody said, hey, they're standing there because there's no water, or there's no water pressure. There was just such a total lack of communication that as residents, we were left wondering what the hell was going on. I mean, it's very hard to stand there and watch your house burn down. You know that there has to be a good reason why nobody is coming to your aid, but nobody either had the time or felt it was necessary to let the residents know. And so after the fire, we got victimized all over again because of all the rumors that were flying around about water being reallocated to Pepperdine, or people just not caring about us. And so I'm not looking to blame. I just would like to understand what happened and why am I currently homeless. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are the questions. Come forward.
Thank you for the opportunity to return. Actually, I didn't even take my 2 minutes before.
Right.
So it's not quite 1 o'clock. This was scheduled to go till 3. I understand the 2-minute limitation initially, thinking that perhaps everybody wouldn't have a chance to tell their story. But I mean, the second to last story I heard, that cannot be replicated in writing. There were people earlier who were in the midst of telling stories like that. They cannot be replicated in writing. This task force has 2 more hours allocated today. It's got another 5 hours allocated. I think it's next Saturday, which I hope will not be run the same way. Why not let people continue their stories for the next 2 hours if they wish to?
Sheila, if I may?
Sure.
I won't take 2 hours, I promise. Some of the key things that I think need to be fixed on this were Edison shutting off our power early on in the game, Water District 29 not having backup pumps, as in gasoline or diesel-powered pumps, non-electric. I think that's critical. I agree with the communication. The flow of communication from the top down was broken somewhere along the way there. The water and the, well, like I said, those are the key things, in my opinion, that need to be fixed out of this whole thing. This is going to happen again. We all know that. So let's try and prepare for it. Thank you.
That's what we think too. Carole.
I would like to say just a few more things.
Sorry? I can't hear you unless you're at the mic.
No, it's okay.
I can't.
I just wanted to mention a few more things. My son was the one that helped with the infrastructure that was destroyed along Canaan, Mulholland, Corral Canyon, and whatnot. For a while, we had no water, we had no phones, we have no online privileges, etc., because our computers were burned in the fire. The destruction, even when we were evacuated, we sought refuge in the tunnels, which saved our lives, actually, if we had stayed on our ranch. The police eventually came and told us we had to leave to follow them. Following them was difficult. Telephone poles that had been burned to the ground were just stumps along the side of the road, or they had fallen over onto the road. Boulders, propane tanks that had exploded and gone through the air and landed in the middle of Canaan. Mm-hmm. All of these things we had to dodge. And then I felt safer in the tunnel rather than following that police car that just down Canaan. I couldn't do it. And a fireball came across the hood of my car, and I thought, oh, holy hell, I'm going to die right here. And I didn't. And it went on, and it caught more things on fire, etc. But the infrastructure is taking a long time. Rebuilding. I have been cleaning my property. I'm 84 years old. People are telling me, sell your property. No, I don't want to sell. I've lived there for 50 years. This is my home. I will rebuild. I hope I live long enough to see it and live in it. But not everybody is at fault in the administration. But this fire was ferocious, and it was unholy in all respects. We could have had fire trucks, but what they had to come through to save some of us was impossible. There were planes ready to take off, but those winds, they could not fly in 70 and 80 mile an hour winds. There was the ocean that they could have taken water and dumped, but they couldn't fly. So the administration is not wholly at fault for what happened, A lot of it was just Mother Nature itself in all of its ferocity. And that was the saddest part of all, because so many people have been devastated by it.
Thank you. Have anyone else who signed up to speak who has not yet spoken? Please come forward.
I already spoke, but I'd like to just bring up one thing.
Okay.
As a suggestion, I just wanted to share my quick experience with how I learned about the fire, just so you'd spoken about.
Right.
Thursday night, I have a tendency when these fires happen, because there's such a bad lack of communication facing the public from all the different agencies that work with fires and disasters, to listen to the dispatch radios. And I listened to the fire dispatch radio for about 36 hours from starting Thursday night until, I don't know, maybe midday Saturday after already integrating with the fire. I heard the panic in the dispatchers' voices progress very significantly, and I heard the lack of resources on the radio. And I do believe that there was a very massive lack of resources. And my suggestion to you guys is twofold. Is one, have a better public-facing resource and information from LA County Fire. Twitter is used pretty well with LA County Fire. Going forward, I think it's better for the citizens, instead of getting their information from local news sources, to get it directly from the sources. That's one. Hold on 1 second. Oh yeah, two. In Malibu, I think it was in the mid-2000s, we had a new code regulation requiring people with new pools to put pool drafts on the street. From what I've heard is that none of those pool drafts have ever been used. And the reason why there's a fear of them being used is the fire department has a fear that there may be salt water in that pool, there may be, et cetera, et cetera. For any resident to take any new code seriously, we must adhere to the reasons why we put in old codes, or put in new codes like those pool drafts. So I'm not sure if in the future you guys will use those pool drafts, but they're there and they weren't being used.
Good point. Thank you. Anyone else want to come forward? Please do.
Hi, Sheila. Ted Vale, Big
Hi,
Rock,
Ted.
longtime supporter of yours. Thank you for doing
Always
this.
appreciate that. One of my favorite out of my 2 million residents. Seriously.
I live in Big Rock for 44 years and went through the '93 fire there, and we had a lot of fire trucks helping us out there. My house was saved, and as I drove back to see if I had a house, there was a fire truck right in front of my house. A lot of people I've talked to now say there weren't enough fire trucks around in the Malibu area. Why is that? Are there too few firemen, too few fire trucks? I think that's one of the main things you're going to have to look at. One of the things that Jane Albrecht and I have done as Vice President of the Malibu Democratic Club is we've proposed a California Reserve Fire Corps.
She passed it out to us.
She gave it to you already?
She
Yes.
did, but you can go ahead.
Okay. The Palisades Democratic Club has supported it, the Malibu Democratic Club. One of the things I see as an advantage for this program, it could be an intermediate step between the Civilian Conservation Corps, people 19 to 25 who can serve 1 year in the Corps. Some of them are involved in fire brigades, but then they have to leave. The Reserve Corps could be an intermediate step between that and the fire department. Some of the ones who want to continue, they could join the Reserve Corps 2 weeks a year, 2 days a month. You have a Reserve Sheriff's Corps that's worked very well for many years. This is something that Gavin Newsom could support, as well as you. And rather than hire many, many more firemen, you could have the Reserve Corps, which could have younger people. It could involve retired firemen who could be the leaders of this corps, and some of them, some who are really good, could ultimately become firemen. We need more fire protection. There are going to be more fires. I had snow at my house the other day, but I was thinking, boy, we needed that snow on November 9th, but it's not going to happen. We need more firemen. I don't know if the county can afford more firemen, but consider carefully support of the California Reserve Fire Corps. I'm glad that you have that piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Anyone else have first thoughts, second thoughts?
Had 4 months of thinking about all of this. Mike Pastrella, you build your career locally here. You probably have gone through so many fires being in the building and safety. There are core issues, core policy issues that can be implemented as a lesson from this fire and the past fires that will save the disasters that are happening to families and homes. Our building code builds out of wood. We dress up the houses with insulation, paper lath material that is made out of petrochemicals. We dress it up with the roof with wood and plywood, and we case it with, again, more layers and layers of asphalt base waterproof systems. When the fire comes from far away, even after 200 feet of clearing, the heat evaporates that asphalt base, the paint and all that other stuff. Hundreds and hundreds of pounds go, maybe thousands of pounds go in a construction of house that are pure petrochemicals, petroleum products that melt down in heat and soak up in the wood and then start steaming. That's just like our stove gas. And that's why we see the houses explode with the fire, because of the buildup of the gases from the building. It should not be allowed anymore to build in these fire danger areas out of combustible buildings. The public doesn't know that. They trust the code. We have an availability right now to build reinforced masonry and concrete that can look and design to any architectural design like you can do with wood. But it's non-combustible. It's more useful. In fact, the stereotype that it costs a lot more money than wood construction is not really true. In fact, perhaps it costs less. The other reason, nobody talked about the water shortages having a factor in the leadership of the fire department holding those firemen back. The fact of the matter, there was no enough water, not enough water pressure in the 3, 4, 5-inch water mains. They're not enough. The fire trucks can run out of water very quickly, and it was somewhat calculated, wise decision that you don't send the firemen and the fire internal when they don't have the water to fight fire. But nobody have said that for a reason. Maybe we could have brought a good attention to the serious problem of the water shortage. Now you're going to hit the people telling them we can't give you a permit to build because you don't have firefighting infrastructure in you. We visited with this in 2007, the water shortage issues when the fire department wasn't issued licenses for hundreds of people who petitioned, and a whole state came up with the emergency water shortages and all that, but then it's quickly forgotten. And now we're suffering, we're complaining about the floods and the amount of water that's going to the ocean, polluting the ocean, oceans, right? Let us put a plan to capture that storm water. I have a plan. It's been done for the past 10 years. With calculations, statistics, based on our research of how much water we can harvest and what it takes to do that, and create streams from every reservoir, create streams for wildlife to be running year-round. So we can answer to the Sierra Club environmentalist. I got into this because I'm an environmentalist.
Thank you.
The other reason is you have to eliminate the reason for these fires happening, and that there's no society that is so civil and so rich that is still putting their power poles up in the air in forest. That can't go on. It's incomprehensible to continue going on. They're loading these power poles with more weight. Now the cables are this thick, 3 inches and 4 inches thick. 20, 30 cables put together. Each foot of these cables weighs 20, 30 pounds, and there are dozens of cables on the power pole, dozens of cables. Stop that. Put them underground. Regardless of cost, it's going to cost a lot less by saving the next fires. Please listen to these causes and forget, don't forget about the misery that happens and all that. This is an ecological catastrophe to the environment.
Thank you.
Our chaparral will never recover. It's a way to desertification. We need a plan to replant the chaparral with the native plants, not with desert weeds that are blowing and are growing now to green the mountains, and we think, oh, it's recovering. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Has anyone come in that has not spoken yet, that signed up to speak? All right, more second thoughts?
Well, the 800-pound gorilla that nobody wants to talk about is all of this costs money. I think the fire department has a golden opportunity to ask for some more money to buy more equipment and or manpower. But people do need to be reminded that if they want all these wonderful things like underground, it costs a lot of money, and they've got to be willing and able to cough it up. Unfortunately, I mean, taxes are taxes.
Jane.
As long as there's a little more time, the Malibu Democratic Club has on its website 14 recommendations of action, and I'd just like to touch on 2 of them here. One is sirens. I'm sure other people have talked about it. I would encourage the county and the city to move on that as quickly as possible. I've actually been talking to the city about it for over a year. They're cheap and they save lives, and there's no new technology that can do it better. When you get a notice in the middle of the night, we got our notice at 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:15, whatever, but people put their cell phones away. They don't sleep in the same room with them. They turn their things off. And in Montecito last year, sirens work because sometimes 5, 10, 15 minutes extra notice saves lives. And they're relatively cheap and easy to do. So I would just encourage the county, maybe not even to wait till the end of the study. I know the city is already considering it, to really take the sirens seriously. They work for tornadoes in the Midwest. They work for tsunamis in Hawaii. If people hear a siren, some of our notices we didn't get for 3 or 4 hours later because we just didn't hear it until later. But if they get sirens, people at least, if they know that they're used if people hear a siren, they know there's mandatory evacuation, or if they hear a siren, they know they better go check the emergency notifications. It will save lives, and it's cheap. The second thing, I don't know if anyone else today has talked about it, but the county and the city have to take brush clearance much more seriously. We are so lucky we have a house. We were 2 yards away, downwind, downhill, covered with ash. But we have one of our neighbors who only comes out here for recreational purposes, whose yard is a complete fire disaster. I called the fire department out about 3 years ago because I was so worried. Some of that comes within 3 feet of our house. And I had a fire person come out after the fire. He said, "Oh my God, you're so lucky." We've got to be really serious about, and I think Ventura County is more serious, that one, you have to get into people's yards. If they don't, people get fined. And if they don't clear, the clearance has to be done for them, and then they're charged for it. But also, something that people don't want to talk about is that state parks. And Joe, I know you're here, but God bless you, but we've got to do better clearances on the SMMC and MRCA lands. And I know there's environmental considerations, but I think that there's ways to do it and a proper way to do it. So I think maybe the state and the county have to get serious about our state parks should be the example of how to do it, not the bad boys on the block. So those are my 2 major points.
Good, thank you. Other second thoughts? Third thoughts?
I just like to reiterate what you said. In a similar situation, I stayed and fought for my house and lost. I had a next door neighbor who had an absolute junkyard. I mean, beyond a junkyard. 23 broken down cars. And I watched the fire blow across the hill above me, skip over my house and our neighbors, light his place up like a torch, and watch everything burn backwards, and took all of our houses down. For 20 years, we complained to the city. all the neighbors complained, and somehow or another, he gamed the system, and never ever was a clearance done. And three of us lost our houses because of that. So I agree the codes need to be reinforced. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to us. I appreciate it.
Yes, please come forward.
I just wanted to take a moment to share that we do have, I understand the fire department was really stretched thin. I mean, I totally understand that. But we also do have the resources of the people in Malibu West and Point Dume and in Crowd Canyon who did stay behind, because we all know that as the initial fire goes through, you can lose houses and property. But many times, 3 to 4 to 5 hours later, a house starts to go up. And those of us who stayed behind after it had blown through, 3, 4, 5 hours later, we're walking around with our shovels, putting out hot spots, and the wind was coming up, and hopefully we stopped anything from starting again, but the fire department didn't come up for 3 days later. We were the ones walking around with our shovels, putting dirt on hot spots. So as you go forward, looking at how we can prevent this happening again, look at how we can better use the resources and more training for the people who will stay to take that shovel and put out hot spots. We could save a lot of homes that way.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
My name is Maggie Lukaroth. I'm the co-manager of the Izzy's Donation Center, which is a donation center above Cafe Habana, which is for fire victims here in town. I've presented a speech to the Malibu City Council meeting 2 weeks ago, and I wrote a letter to the editor, Malibu Times, and I spoke to your Barbara, your assistant, yesterday, and she suggested I put something in writing to you, which I do plan to do. Good. But I also wanted to speak here today.
Please.
Since my continue the Izzy's Donation Center, we may be out of there in March. The girl
to Lisa, because we'll have Maria or Nicole or one of my folks follow up with you.
Okay, thank you. And you will have an or Barbara will have an email which Osborne, she promised me she would forward to the proper people.
Barbara Osborne is central to everything. I'm just saying that right in front of
That's what she let me.
Please come forward.
Okay. Thank you. Again, my name is Bruce Silverstein, and I'm not going to talk about timing at this point. I appreciate that everybody is now getting a chance to speak their piece since there's time. So I also worked at a donation center that was above Toy Crazy in the Country Mart for the first 2 months following the fire. And I witnessed the same thing that the woman before me just spoke about. I mean, people coming in and their lives were in shambles. They literally needed to be persuaded to take things because, you know, we're givers, we're not takers here, and we had to persuade people that if I needed help and they were the ones working there, they would want to help me, and they were able to be helped. But many people expressed that they didn't have a place even to keep things. They were living, if they were lucky, in temporary shelters. And I was able to persuade a number of people to take boxes of things, find friends, put them in their closet, but a great number of people didn't do that and couldn't do that. And even more people couldn't even make it there yet. And I'm so glad that the Izzy's free store is still open, because I was advocating that we needed something to continue beyond the end of the year. But this is going to continue for months to come as people finally are getting into semi-permanent residences. Even beyond rebuilding, there's still people living in hotels. I know people that are living in cars that were living in homes. I mean, the homeless situation itself is an impossible situation, but we have people who are what are called situationally homeless. They've lost their homes in the fire, they were productive members of the society, and they have nowhere to live now. Many of them lost their income as a result of the fire. They worked for people who owned homes in Malibu, or they were getting semi-subsidized housing from people who were friends or employers in Malibu. And these people are being lost in the system. They're not getting the adequate financial assistance they need. They're not getting the adequate humanitarian assistance that they need. Now, I had the great fortune of being able to donate a large amount of furniture from a place that I was closing up that we no longer needed it, and I posted it online, and immediately a great number of people who lost their homes took that, and I was so glad that could happen. But I've been saying also now for the past 2 months, as people get into unfurnished apartments while they're waiting for their homes to be rebuilt, they need just basic furniture. And so I second in strongest terms the proposal to use the courthouse. I think I had suggested that back in December, use the courthouse to allow people to bring furniture to be donated to residents. And it's not just Malibu. You know, obviously it's the entire other side of the hillside or the mountain, whatever we call it. It's Calabasas, it's West Hills, it's Woodland Hills, it's Agora, it's Oak Park, it's Westlake, it's parts of Thousand Oaks. We need to be sympathetic and sensitive and helpful to all of those people. So this should also be going on somewhere on the other side where people can get the help they need. So I'm glad we have the time now to have a dialogue about that. This is not about what caused the fire or what the immediate response to it was, but this is a crisis that's actually ongoing right now that needs immediate attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Please come forward. Not you, Lise. Go ahead. He's just adjusting the mic, so it'll be perfect for you.
Thank you. I just wanted to finish and say something. I ended up saving my farm stand and my business. I lost the house, but because we stayed and put the embers out and just took blankets, and I took my tractor and just kept whacking at the embers. And then I drove down around the other neighborhoods later on after the fire had jumped over to the beach. And I saw the people that were there, and the ones that had stayed saved their homes. And it was a lesson for me about evacuation. I was not in any danger. None of my people on my farm were ever in any danger at that time. I wouldn't have done that otherwise. I happened to live in a position where we could have done that. But so there is something, I think, about this brigade idea that's a great idea. I saw that, I mean, down at Bonsall, there were men and women that were, mostly men, that were just protecting their neighbors' homes, and it was an incredible thing. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
So I'm gonna be on the opposite side of that.
Okay.
I'm very grateful for the people who stayed, particularly Mikey, because we lost 800 of our 1,000 chickens, which is my sole source of income. And the 200 that survived would not be there if it were not for his efforts. I could not get back into Malibu. They would not let me back in, despite me saying, I'm going to lose my business, I'm going to lose my chickens. I mean, they're like our children. Having said that, I think in our society, it's unacceptable that we don't have enough emergency resources to keep people from staying back. Because what I'm thinking is going to happen the next time something like this happens is you're going to have a whole bunch of people in Malibu that are going to refuse to leave. And they are people who should not be staying behind, because we're going to have a situation where we're not just going to have a massive loss of houses, we're going to have a massive loss of lives because people are not trusting of the people that are supposed to be taking care of us. So.
Thank you. Any other second, third, or fourth thoughts? Please come forward.
Hello, Madam Supervisor. My name is Alexis Aria. I live in central Malibu, so I did not get burnt out. But this is my area of specialty, so I'm observing my friends who are very much post-trauma. I have friends who were towers of strength. Now, if you just observe the way they even walk or sit, they are so traumatized. They are a shell of a human being, each single one of them. I would love the county to have at the disposal of Malibu residents counseling, just like Pepperdine does. I do have access to lots of psychologists in Pepperdine. I mean, I personally know, but that would be wonderful. Another thing is an idea I have, and I apologize in advance if my verbiage is not expert in this field, but there are these type of home structures that are called homes of the future. They're very common in Japan. I've seen them in Europe and in US. They are highly energy efficient, and they're even fireproof with the right treatment. They're called monolithic dome homes. They do require a foundation. I don't know if anybody would like them, but the construction time is about 2 months. And they could be 3 stories high. So I have told my friends who are burnout victims, but instead of the residents having to do research, and I know there are some lectures coming up about prefab structures, but if the county can be kind enough to do extensive study on these homes, and if those could be an option, and because they're so energy efficient, there could be even incentives for people who construct those homes. Thank you, Madam Supervisor.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else wishing to speak? Go ahead, or come forward, or both.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that in my neighborhood, we didn't see a fire truck. We're less than a mile off PCH on the other side of Paradise Cove. We didn't see a fire truck or a sheriff's car for 3 days. And, you know, the homes that burnt down, walls fall down and break pipes and gas lines, and I was all over that neighborhood turning off turning off mains to people's houses that were wasting water, wasting gas. The gas company didn't come. Edison didn't come right away. There were all kinds of issues with utilities that weren't managed. And if it costs us not being able to save a home because we had no water, because water was just running all over the place, we need to do something about it. Outside Paradise Cove, there must have been a main water main broken because there was a giant lake on the PCH, and more than 150 fire engines must have drove through that puddle, huge puddle. And I was told that an end cap from a water main just blew off, and without any pressure, somebody could have just screwed it back on and we would have had water and been able to save homes. So I don't know where the fire department is or anyone coming into these neighborhoods to do anything other than to just tell people to get out. And I think there's so many more things to do after an emergency that need to be paid attention to. And I don't understand why the fire department doesn't understand that and gets people out to do it. I put out actually 2 gas mains that were just shooting flames into the trees. And I put it out with water, and then all the valves were stuck, so I had to dig down a couple feet and turn off the valves underground. But we need people in these areas to put out these things and to manage these things. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'm trying so hard not to speak. It's killing
No,
me.
you're not.
I failed. I've totally failed. So I think there's been some points brought up here, which I think everyone knows. Chief Osby and I have talked about it, but there's a real danger to the next fire in that people aren't going to leave. And it's a real issue on both sides, because if they do leave, their homes may burn down, and if they don't leave, they may get hurt. In my neighborhood, when I stayed, I have fire equipment. I know what I'm doing. I saw other people try and stay. Fire came over the hill. People disappeared quickly. It was chaotic. Not a great situation. A couple of people left in the middle of the fire, so we stopped fighting the fire to go look for them. Not a great situation. I just think we're in a new paradigm. We know that. Climate change is real. Multiple fires are real. If there's one going, the conditions are right for more. There's not going to be enough resources. I don't buy that we can afford enough resources, enough people on the ground. So I think proper training for citizens that want to stay and risk their lives and sign a waiver, I don't know a better idea right now that makes sense. I love Jane's idea too, but we need to create more resources. My opinion is the city of Malibu needs to learn how to take care of itself more. Not that I don't trust all these amazing people here doing your best, but clearly there's situations where you can't show up. So my recommendations going forward will be what Malibu can do to take care of ourselves and hope you show up. I was so happy when the first fire showed up. Well, actually the second. The first one didn't help fight the fire, but the second one did. LA County showed up, and that was a great moment for me and my son, and I won't forget that. But resources are thin, and I think we have to look at the reality of that and how we're going to respond, maybe somewhere between Jane's idea. My neighborhood has a brigade, the Malibu West Volunteer Fire Brigade, and we're going to equip ourselves better because we want to be able to take care of ourselves in any sort of emergencies. And I think maybe the bigger emergency that really hasn't been mentioned much here is an earthquake. Because if we have a huge earthquake, we're all shelter in place, water mains may be broken, it's a whole nother story, but it could be a huge, huge issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could just make the point that, yes, the California Fire Reserve Corps, it's not an either-or situation. Mike and I have talked. You can do both, and I think, you know, doing what Mike suggests quickly will be very important. And also the California Fire Reserve Corps will be there in case of all emergencies, for the earthquake as well.
Thank you. What about the tsunami? No, I'm just kidding. We used to say, you know, that this was the season for fires, mudslides, earthquakes, and that was just in my district. Anyone else wishing to speak? Going once? Please come forward. To the mic.
Thanks. My name's Dave Olin. I'm a local resident. I'm pretty much a native Californian, native LA, and been in Malibu. I've lived here almost 20 years, but been coming here most of my life. And this fire, the impact of it, having lived up here, was so devastating. And we fought it. I live in Ramirez Canyon, and we were able to divert it from the house and save the home, but I had substantial damage on my property. If those of you who know Ramirez, it's across from Paradise Cove, and it's very there's a lot of creeks, and there's a flood potential, and for the longest time I met with the city, and I said, you're going to have to take the stuff out of the creeks, we're going to get a flood. And told my insurance company, and there was a lot of debris up at the bridge. That's, for those of you who know the area, that's over by the Streisand Estates. And in fact, the State Parks Fire Department was up there. They must have left they secured the property, the Streisand property, and they left, leaving us to fend for ourselves, and we did. I had fire retardant, I had my tenant there, and we were able, like I said, to divert the fire. There's nothing I could do about the debris in my creek and the other creek closest to the estate of Barbara Streisand's that she had donated to the state of California, and I believe the Mountain Conservancy. On February 2nd, there was another torrential downpour, and it was a matter of time. And I've never experienced a flash flood. I probably got the worst flood in all of Malibu. And I'm very thankful for Senate Bill 917 proposed by Jackson and the insurance commissioner, which my insurance covers it, but it could have been avoided. I mean, I know that there was mayhem, but this was already, 2.5 months afterwards. So I'm dealing with that now. It took out my floors, a lot of my property. I mean, I have 2 feet of mud. I'm out, and a lot of other people, my neighbor was really badly affected. So I really Chief Osby and all of you, we appreciate it, but as the old saying goes, you're a day late and a dollar short, not necessarily you, but there's been issues with the city. I'm sure you heard it all, and with the fire department. I myself am an attorney, and I've been representing a lot of these victims, and the trauma here is just unspeakable. So we're doing a lot of healing and rebuilding. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Anyone else wish to speak? Well, I want to thank you very much. I want to thank you first and foremost. Many of us, when we had the recovery sessions, and some of you were also there, know that many of us on the task force have been through similar issues in other parts of our lives and other areas. A couple of people talked about the lack of empathy, and I know it feels that way, and it is that way. If you don't get it, you know that you didn't get it. My impetus for putting this task force together is a number of things. One has to do with communication. And it isn't that there's a magic answer. There are so many different forms of communication. I live in Santa Monica, and I don't get any notices of anything because I didn't sign up for them. And I didn't know that you had to sign up for them. And one of the things that I always like to say is that I think I've been elected 13 times because I'm kind of like everybody else. I don't know sometimes how to put stuff online, or I don't know, that I'm supposed to sign up for some kind of phone call. But that's part of what I want to get at in the task force, is the real nitty-gritty about how each person needs to know something, can know something. The other thing that we'll have to have a very deep conversation about is how we fight fires. It's very interesting to me because people talk about their grandfathers and their great-grandfathers and the volunteer fire departments in their town in Kansas and, wherever. And this notion of sirens, for instance, although I think they're also run by electricity. I'm not sure. We have to think about that. What do we do now in the modern world when the modern world fails us? So this is going to be a process, and I think a very detailed one and a very deep digging one. And I'm very happy and sad to have been here to listen to you, not the first time, of course, and want you to continue to communicate with us. I can't tell you how important the written stuff is. Anything that you want to say, your recommendations, your experience. You just got your neighbor to give their story. They didn't want to show up, kind of thing. It's very important to us. If you have people who couldn't make it today, please encourage them to come on Sunday to King Gillette. It's not too far away. And I look forward to that listening session as well. Secondly, I want to thank the people here on the task force. It's kind of an unprecedented gathering. And I said for the task force, I want the guy or the gal in charge. And they came through with that. And I'm grateful for that. And that was also a demonstration to you that this is not somebody's 13th in command, deputy coming to go like this while you talk, but people who have the power and the ability to make change. And we mean to make it all together. I want to thank my neighbors from Ventura who showed up, who are doing a great job themselves. Senator Jackson's bill was mentioned, and they had their own issues that they're still going through with all of the different fires in that county. And we value our neighbors' experience. We've also heard from Northern California, San Diego, other places. People have been through these things. And finally, I want to say, it seems to be everybody's conclusion that this is not going to be the last time we go through this. So my hope and my intention is to do everything we can to be prepared. There are conflicts. The Department of Agriculture from the county is here. They have a total weed abatement program where you're going to have like a moonscape next to your house. And some houses were saved because of that. Others say, I don't want it to look like that. That's just not why I'm here. The recommendation that we build with other materials. Other people have said to me, I love my house the way it is. This is Malibu. And so to try to give people options at the same time as we keep as many people safe and properties safe as possible. Several of you said you had evacuated 250,000 people and 3 people died. It is a sort of miracle. And it was, yes, it was the agencies, but it was also you, getting your neighbors out, helping people to find a place to go. We will look further into the donation center. So thank you for what you've done. I mean, your humanity saved a lot. So let me ask before we adjourn, is there anyone else that wants to say anything else? And all of your second and third and fourth thoughts, obviously you can add. As I said, online, I really suggest it, because it's a good record for us. Don't forget to put your name and address. Anybody else? Are you waving at me? No. Okay. I'm waving at you. Thank you very much. Take good care of yourselves.
Thank you. Great meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important for us. It's frustrating, it's always frustrating for them.
Yeah.